This talk is part 3 in a series analyzing the Gospel of John through the lens of Christian mysticism. So I'm going to be just focusing on a few verses that I believe point out or demonstrate the Christian mysticism that the Messiah was teaching, that Jesus Christ, Yeshua the Messiah, was teaching us. So this will make more sense if you've listened to the previous parts 1 and 2. So I'm just going to go ahead to verse 33. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. So what should be recognized here is that it's bread of God that is coming down from heaven to the earth. So this isn't talking about heaven after death, right? Comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. So he's talking about the world we live in right now, right? Life as a human being on the earth. And gives life to the world. Well, obviously, we're already alive in, the biological sense of the word. So he's obviously meaning something other than just biological life. And as I said in a previous talk, another way you can translate the word life, if you look into the original language and various definition choices, you can find satisfaction as being one of those options, but also we use the term life in this way in modern English already. For example, someone might say, "Oh, I felt so alive, during that event," or whatever it was. Something exhilarating, something satisfying, right? So life can also mean satisfaction, even in modern English. You don't even need to look into, the Greek to come to that possibility. All right, to verse 40. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who looks on the Son and believes in him should have eternal life. And again, eternal life, I believe, can be translated also as lasting satisfaction. So keep that in mind. But what I wanted to focus on with this verse is the words, who looks on the Son. So again, as I mentioned in the previous talks, these verses are a stark contrast to what the Paulinist church would have you believe about what Jesus is saying. Right? He's saying who looks on the Son and believes in him. So what does that mean, to look on the Son? Right? If we're not able to see him as, the people of that time and place were able to, right, in person, seeing his physical form, is this just not relevant to us? Is he saying eternal life is only possible for those that actually we're able to look at him physically. Well, that wouldn't make sense, would it? So there must be a way that we can look upon him even today. And as I was talking about previously, that's seeing him in his resurrected form, his spiritual body, which is available to all of us. It's actually, you could say, omnipresent. And comes to us in what are known as kairos moments. So that's when we can look upon the Son, but it's not just the looking upon, or we could say more specifically, recognizing, right? Look upon as in recognize him when he arrives. The recognition is necessary, but so is the belief in the calling. So you can recognize the kairos moment, but still not believe in its goodness, right? You can still hesitate, right? Like when Peter was in the boat, right? He recognized Jesus on the water, and he did initially answer that call, but then he began to doubt, right? He didn't believe that what he was being called to do was safe, right? And that's exactly what kairos moments are like for most of us. We might have an inkling of or an intuition that this is a calling, but then we hesitate oftentimes because we don't think it's safe, right? So fear is a major sabotaging element if we cling to it. So you have to recognize his presence and then also believe in the goodness of his calling, that he's calling you to do in the kairos moment, right? Kairos moments are these 1 second subtle and sudden moments of opportunity to take bold action, to either embrace a desire for yourself or someone else, or to reject an abuse being directed at yourself or someone else. And that's how we make the world a better place, by increasing the attainment of healthy desires and decreasing abuse in the world. That's how the Son of God brings heaven to earth for us, when we answer his callings in the commandments. Okay, moving forward to verse 57. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever feeds on me, he also will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. So the portion of this verse that I think is important to focus on here is the idea of feeding on him. Right? In verses prior to that, he's talking about actually eating his flesh and drinking his blood. So obviously he doesn't mean this literally, but again, it's good to point out that, okay, here he's talking about his blood, right? So the Paulinist church is obsessed with his blood, and they're always going on about his blood, but notice they don't talk about it in the way that Jesus actually talked about it, right? They talk about it as if it's this currency, this payment that basically overrides your need to follow the greatest commandments and to stop sinning, right? Because you supposedly can't stop doing that. And so, embracing this false humility, you then go on and on about the power of his blood or the Paulinist church does, and you do if you follow them. But here he says, drinks my blood has eternal life, right? Who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life. And then in verse 57, whoever feeds on me. So verse 57 gets to, I think, the more mystical aspect of this, right? That is maybe less clear when speaking about the flesh and the blood in particular. So another way, he's giving us another way to look at a Kairos moment, right? It's a calling, but it's also something that gives us nourishment if we, quote unquote, feed upon it, right? These opportunities are the living water or the bread from heaven, right? He gives these different metaphors, all with the same meaning. It's a heavenly form of sustenance, right? That satisfies us more than anything else we can find in life. So to feed on him means to align with the Kairos moment calling, recognizing him, seeing him, and then believing in the calling, trusting in him, having faith in him. And then you can, as he put it, feed on him, which again is just another, various ways he's explaining this experience, this dynamic between us and his spiritual form.